Welcome all to tonight's presentation on the Accessible Streets project. We absolutely thank you for the time that you've set aside to join us to find more, to find out more about our exciting project. My name is Ōtūmoetai, and I am the project manager from Tauranga City Council on this project. We are a little bit pressed for time, so I will be keeping the welcoming and introductions short. First, I do need to cover some housekeeping. As I mentioned, we are recording this presentation, so for privacy concerns, that's why we've switched off the cameras and the microphones to all the participants. But we definitely encourage some feedback. Please feel free to pop it in the chat. Any questions or comments, and then we'll get those covered. Before we get started with the presentation, Tanya, could you possibly introduce yourself and also explain who Ōtūmoetai is?
Sure. Kia ora. My name is Tanya Hyde. I am the team leader for Ōtūmoetai. Ōtūmoetai is a group of organisations which include Stantec, Oricon and Becca, who have come together to help Tauranga City Council to deliver this project. So our role on the project is to help support council to go out to consultation, so wanting your feedback and seeking that feedback and working out how we include that in the design. So we'll be looking at the cycleway and some of the bus improvements and other parts of the scope, how we plan that, how we then look to put that in a design that we can put that out to be built, and then we'll look after it as we go through the construction process and making sure that we get the right outcomes for the community here. And Ollie is part of the team, so I'll let him do the introductions as well.
Yeah, g'day there. I'm Ollie Brown. I'm the design lead for Ōtūmoetai.
So what is Accessible Streets? Accessible Streets is a 20-year program designed to provide more active travel options by delivering a connected network of cycleways throughout Tauranga in order to make it easier for people of all ages and abilities to travel by bike. To start, we are focusing on areas where there's already a high demand for these active travel choices. And by connecting these suburbs to the central city with safe and direct cycling routes, we will encourage and enable more people to cycle. We're also looking at ways on how to improve access and safety to bus stops and possibly some bus priority at some key locations along our route. Accessible Street is also one of 15 actions proposed by the Ministry of Transport's Road to Zero strategy. The strategy sets out a vision for New Zealand where no one is injured or killed on the roads. Why Ōtūmoetai Peninsula? Ōtūmoetai Peninsula is a great place to live, I think, as most of you will know, with its central location, green spaces, various commercial and retail centres, community centres, and numerous schools. We're also expecting a lot more growth in this area. But because of this unique location and its current layout, we don't have room to expand or build more roads to meet all the traffic demands. We have been listening to the community, and on this project, we will be engaging with mana whenua, and also we will be engaging with our wider stakeholders such as schools and businesses like yourself. What you have told us so far. People in Ōtūmoetai have already indicated through various surveys that they would cycle to shops and schools or work if they felt safer on the roads. The most recent two surveys being the Whakahau Taketake survey and also recent feedback on the Ōtūmoetai spatial plan, people have indicated that they want safer, walking and cycling options, and also improve bus services. So what are we doing right now? We have an opportunity to seek funding from the government to develop the Accessible Streets program. With this project, we are working alongside our partners to develop a business case to evaluate the benefits, the costs, and the risks of various cycleway options before we reach a preferred option. Among the things that we need to consider when reviewing these options are the individual community needs, how it'll affect local commercial and retail centers, the environment, the cultural areas, and also how the primary route will connect to schools and the city center. And once we've done all of this and the business case is approved, we can proceed on with the next stages of the project, which will then be detailed design and then eventually construction. Oliver from Ōtūmoetai is actually going to take us through what these options might be. Thanks, Ollie.
Thanks there, Dion. So how are we going to achieve this improvement in the network? How are we going to make the streets accessible? And what we're looking at is really providing opportunities for more people to be able to safely travel about, whether it be by walking or bike, or accessing and using a bus and making the travel times more reliable. And it's providing a viable alternative to the private motor vehicle. So the map on the right of the screen here, that shows the extent of the project. And in purple is the cycle component. And then in yellow is the bus component, which is looking at improving bus stop accessibility. And included with the bus stop accessibility at each end of these brown areas that show the multimodal areas. So that's where we're going to look at improving bus reliability through the likes of potentially bus lanes. And then we have in orange here the neighbourhood streets area. So they're the locations where we're trying to reduce the maximum speeds that vehicles are travelling to make it safer for the community. And then finally, intertwined with all of this are these circles that have been highlighted at intersections, and that's showing areas where there's a known crash or safety problem that we're looking to resolve in conjunction with the project. Now, from a cycle perspective, the key group of people that we're aiming at is the all ages and ability group. So they're the people that are the 8 to 80. And within that group, there's a group that are called interested but concerned. So they're the people that say that they would start riding their bike if they felt safer. And to provide the infrastructure to make people feel safer, it sits up at this end here. So it's looking at an off-road path or a cycleway that's separated from the traffic by a raised median, or a really slow street, 30k an hour with some sharrows on it. What doesn't work so well for encouraging the people that don't feel safe to ride is doing the on-road painted cycle lanes or sharing the traffic lane with the likes of buses or heavy vehicles. So from a cycle perspective, we're aiming at this higher end here of comfort and making people feel comfortable so they start riding. Now, what these facilities look like, there's three main facility types. The first one here is a shared path, and that's where the path is used by people both cycling and walking and scootering. They work really well over a variety of areas. Typically we try and use them over shorter distances because you do end up with conflicts between pedestrians and riders, and particularly where your pedestrians are more elderly or younger. Then there's the one-way cycleway. So this example in the bottom corner has two-way traffic flow, and then it has the riders on either side of the road riding in the same direction as the vehicles, and separated from the traffic with a raised separator. Now you can see with this kind of facility, this kind of cycleway where you're behind the concrete median, is that you end up with the traffic lights where the riders get their own phase, and it's fully separated from turning traffic. So that improves the safety for all the riders. And then there's the two-way cycleway, where the riders are on one side of the road only, and they can ride in both directions on that side of the road. And you see with the separators here, there's a mixture of concrete separators, and then there's the potential for landscaping, depending how wide that is. Typically with a two-way cycleway, you can retain parking on one side of the road, which is opposite the separator, which sometimes you can't achieve with a one-way cycleway. Now, when we start looking at different cycleway facilities, there's a number of considerations that we look at, and here's just a short list of those. But we consider things such as, how do the visually impaired users, how would they use the footpaths or the shared paths? What impact is there to on-street parking? Who are the businesses on the route? How do they use their parking, and how do they access their buildings? What kind of vegetation do we have along the route, and is it protected? Is it offering an area of shelter? And what are the road reserve widths? So boundary to boundary and curb to curb, and that leads on to what the potential cost of construction could be. So being quite a large study area, we've split this up into two main areas, and area one shown here from up by Ōtūmoetai College, along Windsor Road, Bellevue, Waihi, up 11th Ave to Cameron Road. And that's still quite a large area, so we've split that into three sections. And I'll step you through each of those three sections now and the different facility types that we're considering at the moment. So for section 3, which starts at Ngātai Road, where there's a two-way cycleway existing on the north side of the road, and we come down Ngātai Road, Charles Street, Windsor Road, past Ōtūmoetai College, and continue down to the intersection with Bellevue. Now through this section, we've identified 4 different cycleway options. The first 2 of them are two-way cycleways, and starting at Ngātai Road, it's a two-way on the eastern side of the road that continues along Windsor, past the school and to Bellevue. This option has a one-way traffic on it, and what that allows is parking on both sides of the road. For option B, it's the same design, but it has two-way traffic flow, and to achieve that two-way traffic flow, it removes parking from one side of the road. Option C provides one-way cycleways, so that's a cycleway looking like this on either side of the road. It removes parking from one side of the road and retains two-way vehicle flow. And then option D, which has the two-way cycleway on the western side of the road, something similar to this here, and it also has parking on one side. Now within all of this area, going past all of the schools, there's the government's Road to Zero objective, and as part of that, the speed limits past schools are going to be reduced to 30 kilometres an hour. So this section of Ngātai, Charles and Windsor would all be 30 kilometres an hour. And this section's a bit more unique in that it also overlaps with the neighbourhood street section that I will talk about later on. Now linking onto this section is Bellevue Road. So we've just talked about Windsor Road up here. We continue along Bellevue Road, through the Brookfield roundabout, up the cutting, up to where the BP service station is on Waihi Road. Through this section, we've identified 3 options. Option A being one-way cycleways on either side of the road, and shared paths through the Brookfield intersection. This option removes parking from both sides of the road. Option B provides the two-way on the south side of Bellevue Road. It allows for parking on the northern side of Bellevue, and then going through the Brookfield roundabout, it uses the Lees Park area rather than staying up right on the roundabout. And then option C, that's the same along the first section of Bellevue Road, and it's a two-way through the Brookfield roundabout, and then it splits south of the roundabout to one-ways on either side. And this section of Bellevue Road coming up to Waihi Road is reasonably steep, so providing one-way cycleways does have a safer outcome for people riding. And you'll note that we're not proposing a two-way on the eastern side of the road. That's because people riding against the traffic flow would be going down the hill in an unexpected direction. And then section 5, that links on to Bellevue Road. So it starts at the BP service station, continues along Waihi Road, through the Birch intersection at the bottom of the hill, and then up 11th Ave onto Cameron Road. Now through this section there's been 4 options that are identified. One-ways on either side of the road, which retains the central flush median. And then a sub-option of that provides the one-ways and then has a raised median through the middle of the road. And it would have a roundabout at Churchill Road and a roundabout at the top of Bellevue Road. And that's to remove the conflict between drivers turning through queued traffic, which occurs in the morning peak period, and riders. Option C is a two-way cycleway that is on the western side of the road. So it passes through the BP intersection on the northern side, then crosses to a two-way on the south side. The reason that we've crossed over to the south side here is to avoid this area in here that has a reasonably intense land development that has a more elderly population, and it's looking at the potential risk for conflicts between pedestrians and riders. So a two-way on the south side that continues, and then it changes through this cutting section to a shared path, and that's because of space constraints through the Birch intersection, and then continues on the southern side up to Cameron Road. Now, with a two-way cycleway passing these side roads here, for safety, would need to restrict some of the access into the side roads, and that would be via a raised central median up to St John Street, which is here. And then option D, and option D provides the one-way cycleways along part of Waihi Road and then crosses over at the Churchill Street area, and then provides the same option as C for the balance. So area 2 starts in by the Domain on Chapel Street, Cameron Road, and then continues along Chapel onto Ngātai Road and ends up at the Ōtūmoetai roundabout. And west of the Ōtūmoetai roundabout is the existing two-way cycleway that's on the north side of Ngātai Road. So we've divided this up into 2 sections for analysis based on the Chapel Street Bridge. Three options have been identified for this section, starting at the Harrington intersection. The first one uses a shared path on either side of the road and continues that all the way through and across the Chapel Street Bridge to Maxwell's Road. Now, highlighted on these drawings are potential crossing locations or locations where we'd look at putting in traffic signals or improving the existing traffic signals. Option B provides one-way cycleways. So instead of the shared path option of option A, it provides a separate walking and cycling area, which could be quite important around this top area where you have the domain. This retains parking through this section, but it does change it from the 90-degree parking to parallel parking. So there would be some parking removal. It retains the signals around Marsh and into the Bayview. And then option C provides a two-way on the eastern side of the road for the full length, and then uses short sections of shared path to connect the estuary into the existing estuary path route and provide a crossing point over from Vale Street. Now, an important point about all of these options is they all require the removal of a traffic lane, and at this stage we are expecting that it would be the northbound traffic lane, and that would be removed from Brown Street up to Vale Street, where there's the high-speed left turn off Chapel into Vale. Now, Area 2 picks up from west of the Chapel Street Bridge and continues along Ngātai Road up to the Ōtūmoetai intersection. And we've identified 3 potential cycleway options through this section. The first 2, A and B, are one-way cycleways on either side of the road with a short length of shared path from the Beretta Street climbing the hill where the road's a little bit narrower. This option A provides parking on one side of the road, but to achieve that requires the removal or undergrounding of the power lines. So there is a cost implication. Option B removes all of the parking and can be achieved within the existing curb lines. And then option C, which is a two-way on the northern side of the road. This retains parking on the south side of the road with minimal widening. Now, included in these options is the Vale Street intersection, and if we're removing a northbound traffic lane, then the high-speed left slip from Chapel to Vale isn't required anymore, and so that would be combined with the current exit from Vale Street. So it would still be two-way on Vale, but this section here would be cul-de-saced. We're also looking at the Beretta intersection, and it's likely that traffic signals would be installed there. It makes it easier for people to cross over Beretta and have access to the waterfront. And then heading down towards Ōtūmoetai at the roundabout, likely the roundabout would be replaced with traffic signals and the existing zebra crossing replaced with pedestrian cycle signals. If we come back to the Maxwell's Road intersection, there's a couple of options there, be it full traffic signals or whether it be signals for pedestrians and cyclists only. So that's quite a quick skim through the options that have been considered from a cycling perspective. I'll now talk about the Neighbourhood Greenways, and these are the areas that have been looked at on Maxwell's Road by Pillins Point School, and then the Queen Street area by Ōtūmoetai College. Now, the objective of a greenway is to slow down the maximum speeds of traffic to allow people that are cycling or scootering to share that road space with the vehicle traffic and have a lower volume of vehicle traffic on it. And what that achieves is by slowing it down and having less traffic, it makes it easier for people to cross the road and do that more safely. So within the Neighbourhood Greenways, we've identified 4 main options. And if I start looking at, or direct you towards option 4 to start with, it's providing a 30 km/h speed limit. And that's all of these streets here that are highlighted in green. So Queen Street, Princess and Anne. As I mentioned at the start, Windsor Road would also be 30k an hour as part of the Road to Zero safer speeds around schools. So what option 4 does is it simply puts up some traffic signs and says, please drive more slowly. And as we head from option 4 back to option 1, it's increasing interventions to slow down people driving. And the first one would be adding some road marking. So these kinds of things here, they're called sharrows, so a shared arrow for the cyclists and vehicle traffic. And option 2 builds on option 3, and it adds in raised platforms. So these kinds of things here. So probably known as speed humps, but a little bit less aggressive. And then also looking at the intersection treatments where you have large radiuses and it's quite a wide crossing. We look to narrow those crossing points up, which helps mobility impaired people cross and visually impaired people cross. And then if we continue up to option 1, that continues to build on option 2 and then adds in more landscaping features and a higher level of urban design and placemaking. Now, if I move on to the bus priority, and that's looking at these areas at either end, which is Chapel Street, heading from Bayview up to Brown Street, and then 11th Ave from Birch up to Cameron Road. And the kind of objective that we have here is to improve the reliability of bus travel time by looking at features such as dedicated bus lanes like this here, or looking at a transit lane, which is encouraging people to have at least 2 people in a car. There's 2 T2s and T3s, so 2 or 3 people in the car to use that traffic lane. So looking at Chapel Street, we've identified 4 options for consideration, and it's the same 4 options that we've considered for 11th Ave as well. It's the same philosophy. So option 1 looks at bus stops, and these bus stops would stop in the traffic lane and requires people and vehicles to stop behind them. What that does is creates a gap in front of the bus, and so the bus doesn't get stuck behind a queue. Building on these in-lane bus stops is a bus jump. So it takes the traffic signals and it allows the bus to go before the general traffic, so it gets in front of the queue. And then building on that further is a dedicated bus lane. So that would start by the Chapel Street Bridge and continue up to Brown Street, where there would be traffic signals that would make it easier for the bus to also exit from Brown Street. Now, to achieve this option here, a dedicated bus lane, or to achieve a T2, T3 lane, requires the removal of a vehicle traffic lane. And it's the same thing down at Waihi and 11th, where we have the 4 options, the first being the in-lane bus stops, the second being the bus jump at the Birch signals, then looking at a dedicated bus lane from just west of Birch up to Cameron Road, and finally the T2, T3 lane. So the process we're going through with these is to identify where the delays are for buses at the moment, and then what one of these options or combination of these options improves the travel time. Now, as part of this project and improving the accessibility, what we're looking at is with the existing bus stops, are they in the correct location? So we're having a look at where people climb on and off the buses at the moment. What are the facilities at the bus stop? What are the shelters like? Is there a space for people to sit? Crossing the road to the stop? Do we need to add in a central median to make it easier for people to use? And that's been considered along all of Ngātai Road and Bellevue, Waihi Road and Ōtūmoetai Road. And that's something that we're working on at the moment as we develop these options with the Regional Council. So, Dion, if I pass back to you.
Yes. Thanks, Ollie. Yeah, that was quite a bit of information. Yeah, definitely. We would like some feedback on the options or anything else that you guys think that we need to consider along the route. We will take it. We will use it in part of developing our preferred option. You should all have our email address where we've responded and sent you the link to this. So anytime, feel free to send an email or a question. Yeah, I think at this point,